After visiting an old mansion, my pregnant wife was possessed by darkness. We lost our baby and fought to survive the curse. We'd been planning that trip for months. My wife, Emma, was 6 months pregnant, and we knew it would be the last chance to go anywhere, just the two of us, for a long time. We rented a car and drove up to Vermont, to this old countryside mansion turned in that had stellar reviews for being quiet, scenic, and full of character. It was full of character, all right? From the moment we stepped into that place, something felt off. The rooms smelled like lavender and dust. The hallway floors creaked under every step. The owner, an elderly woman named Marlene, gave us a room at the far end of the house, saying it had a great view of the woods. She smiled, but something about her eyes gave me chills. That first night, Emma couldn't sleep. She said she kept hearing footsteps in the hallway even though the other rooms were empty. Around 3 a.m., she shook me awake and whispered that someone had been standing at the corner of our room. A dark figure. I looked. Nothing was there. We left the inn a day early. Emma said she didn't feel safe there. I didn't argue, but after we came home, she wasn't the same. The next few days after we returned from Hollowridge Manor were unnervingly quiet. Emma wasn't just distant. She was unreachable. Her once warm, lively eyes were now vacant, glassy, as if she was staring past me into something I couldn't see. She rarely spoke, and when she did, it was in whispers I could barely hear, or strange murmurs during her sleep. Most of her time was spent in the guest room, sitting silently, gently touching her baby bump as if she was listening to something inside, but not in a loving way. It was almost like a reverence mixed with fear. Sometimes, I caught her smiling faintly at nothing visible in the room. Once, I overheard her humming a lullaby I didn't recognize, an eerie melody that seemed out of place. Then the scratching started. At first, I blamed it on rats or mice, but the noises weren't coming from the attic or the floorboards. It was coming from inside the nursery walls, behind where we planned to set up the crib. There were no pipes, no wires, no crawl spaces in those walls. One night, I woke up to find Emma standing beside the empty crib frame we hadn't even finished assembling. She was completely still, staring down as if something precious was lying there. "Emma," I whispered. She slowly turned to me. Her eyes were darker than I'd ever seen, drained of color, almost black. Her mouth twitched slightly and she whispered back, "He's growing stronger." I felt an icy chill grip my spine. That same night, I heard her speaking in a deep, foreign voice while asleep. It wasn't English, and the words were guttural, vibrating like an ancient curse. I didn't recognize the language, but the sound echoed in my chest long after she was silent again. I started documenting everything. A week later, during a routine prenatal appointment, the doctor looked at me with concern. "You said she's 6 months pregnant? The scans show something unusual. The baby's development isn't typical." My blood ran cold. It wasn't just postpartum anxiety. It wasn't normal pregnancy behavior. Emma wasn't herself anymore. I suspected she hadn't been since we stayed in that mansion. So I started digging into the history of Hollowridge Manor, and what I found made everything terrifyingly clear. I found out that nearly a century ago, a woman named Eleanor lived in Hollowridge Manor. She was pregnant and desperate, believing her unborn child was something unnatural. Legend says she was driven mad by voices she heard in the walls, whispering promises of power in exchange for her soul. Eleanor died in the manor during childbirth. Some say her baby was stillborn, but others claim the child was never human, something evil trapped between this world and the next. When I shared this with Emma, she seemed to shudder. She told me she often felt someone watching her, especially near the nursery. She said she heard whispers, 2 voices promising her strength, control, and something more if she gave in. I became terrified for Emma's safety, and for our unborn child. One night, she woke me up again. "He's here," she whispered. "He's inside me." That was the moment I knew this wasn't just haunting. It was possession. I reached out to Father Bennett, a local priest with experience in exorcisms. The moment he entered our home, his face went pale. "This place, the spirit is strong," he said. The exorcism was brutal. Emma screamed. Her body contorted in ways I didn't think possible. Candles blew out, the air grew heavy, and at one point, I saw a shadowy figure flicker just beyond the doorway. Hours later, Emma collapsed, exhausted and pale. She looked at me with tears in her eyes and whispered, "It's over." But I wasn't convinced. For days after the exorcism, things seemed to settle. Emma started speaking again, her laughter returned, and the eerie silence in the house was broken by her humming the lullaby she once whispered in that strange voice. I hoped the nightmare was finally over. But some nights, when the house was still and dark, I'd catch Emma staring at her baby bump with that same haunted look. Sometimes, her eyes would flicker strangely, as if fighting something inside. I tried to brush it off as trauma from the possession. When the day finally came, Emma gave birth. But the joy was short-lived. The baby was stillborn. The doctors couldn't explain why. No complications during pregnancy, no signs of distress, just silence at the moment of birth. Emma refused to look at the child. She whispered to me in her weakest voice, "He's not really gone." She began dreaming of the baby every night. In these dreams, the child's face was pale and cold, eyes empty like the dark void itself. He'd speak softly, calling her Mom, but with a voice that chilled my soul. He told her she couldn't save him, that he was trapped forever. Despite everything, Emma held on to the hope that somehow, the child was still out there, somewhere between worlds. The mansion's curse, the possession, and the loss haunted us long after. I often wondered if the evil we expelled that night ever truly left, or if it was just waiting for another chance. Sometimes, when the house is quiet, I hear the lullaby again, but I'm the only one awake. After the loss, Emma sank into a deep silence. She stopped talking about the baby, but her eyes told a different story, haunted, distant, and filled with sorrow no words could capture. I tried everything to help her heal, therapy, support groups, even late-night talks, but something else lingered, a shadow that neither of us could escape. One evening, as I was working late, I found Emma staring at the nursery window, her face pale and tight with fear. "He's calling me," she said softly, "from the other side." At first, I thought it was grief talking, but the truth was darker. That night, she dreamt again. The baby, pale and lifeless, reached out to her, whispering about the mansion, the curse, and the darkness still attached to our family. The next morning, I found a strange symbol drawn in dust on the nursery floor, something I didn't recognize but that matched the old drawings I'd seen in the manor's archives. It was clear, the evil wasn't gone. We reached back out to Father Bennett. He warned us that some spirits don't just leave after an exorcism. They linger, tied by sorrow, rage, or unfinished business. The baby, or whatever it was part of that darkness, and it was still with us. Our life became a cautious balance between normalcy and the shadow that followed us home. Sometimes, in the quietest moments, I swear I hear a soft lullaby. And Emma, she looks toward the empty crib and whispers, "I'm coming, my child." Months passed, and the shadow in our lives didn't fade. Emma's health declined, not physically but mentally and emotionally. The once vibrant woman I married was slipping away into a world only she could see. One night, as the house was quiet, Emma held my hand tightly and said, "I need to say goodbye." We decided to visit a remote chapel deep in the woods, a place Father Bennett recommended. It was said to be blessed ground, a sanctuary for restless spirits. As we entered the chapel, a cold wind swept through the open doors. Emma closed her eyes and whispered prayers taught by Father Bennett. I held her close as she began to speak softly, words that sounded like a farewell not just to the baby, but to the darkness itself. For the first time in months, Emma smiled, a real smile, filled with peace. That night, the house was silent.
No whispers, no shadows.
Just quiet. Emma finally began to heal, carrying the memory of our lost child with love instead of fear. Though the past will always haunt us, we learn to live with the scars, stronger, together, and free. Sometimes, when the night is still, I think I hear that lullaby one last time. A gentle reminder that love can survive even the darkest shadows. Let me know if you want me to make a summary or a YouTube title for this.